Whoa, time for guest hosts. Whoa, it's time for guest hosts. Whoa, love the guest hosts. I just want a guest host. It's episode 12 of Guest Host Raw, the series where I look at every episode of the guest host era of Monday Night Raw. Folks, at this point in the timeline, we are officially 3 months into this grand journey known as the guest host era. Breaking Point 2009, the first and only submission-themed pay-per-view in WWE history, is officially in the rear-view mirror on the night of this show from September 14th, 2009 at the Air Canada Centre in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Speaking of Breaking Point, if you're a backer on the Patreon page, that's patreon.com/wrestlingwithwregret, then you have access to a live watch-along that Mr. Ooh La La and I did of Breaking Point, and that happened one night before this video dropped, just to bring us all up to speed on the Raw and SmackDown side of things, leading in to this episode with our special guest host this week, Trish Stratus. Before we get into that, we get a quick recap of the Raw main event for Breaking Point, the I Quit match between Orton and Cena for the championship. And after Cena gets the bejesus beaten out of him, he finally comes back. He ends up winning, and he repeats to the crowd that I did not quit. It's one of the best matches of the Orton-Cena rivalry over the years. And man, it's just, 2025 C-Nation maniacs, John, they're so disappointed in you. The show kicks off, and will you all please rise for the legendary, the iconic, the inaugural guest host general manager, the Animal Batista. The former world champion makes his return to Raw. He's still got his arm in a brace. It was a few months back when Orton and the Legacy tore his tricep and put him out of action and whatnot. And they did announce in the week before that he was going to be making a career-altering announcement tonight. So, wonder what that's going to be. And he says, before I make my announcement, I just want to thank each and every one of you. He thanks the fans, he thanks everybody, and he says there's been a lot of rumors since I've been having some big injuries this past year, so I figured it's time to say goodbye. And there's shock, there's audible gasping, and negative sounds in response to this. They don't want to see it. There's Batista chants in response to this, and Batista's like, I just want to thank you all for letting me have the time of my life here, and he's starting to get emotional. But then suddenly, Randy Orton's music plays. The now former WWE champion makes his way to the ring, and boy, this sure tells you that Batista's not going anywhere, doesn't it? But Orton says, I may not be happy that I lost the WWE Championship last night, but one thing that does cheer me up is seeing you here in the ring, getting ready to retire. And he's just kind of mocking him for it. And he says, save the emotion, save the goodbye speech, get out of here. Nobody cares. And Randy's like, you're not retiring because of your health. You're retiring because of me, because I ripped your arm out of the shoulder. Suck it. Like the way he said that made me laugh for some reason. And I punted you in the skull, so why don't you go ahead and hang your head and cry like you were doing before I got out here. And so now Batista's looking very amused, and Orton gets pissed by this. It's like, what, you think it's funny I ended your life? That I ruined your career? But Batista is just kind of laughing. He says, I'm going to tell you two things. One is, you're very predictable. And two, slips off the arm brace, and he goes, I know something you don't know. Bam! Starts jumping Orton. It was a ruse. He wasn't injured after all, and he snuck attacked Orton, and Orton powders. And then Batista's like, I'm not here to announce my retirement. I'm here to announce that I'm leaving Raw and going to SmackDown. And the audience is like, yo! Well, that fucking sucks. Like, hey, man, we were just like all invested in you and happy you're back. Now you're leaving? What the fuck? But then Batista says, but I did talk with our guest general manager, and she made one more match for me here, and it's a no-holds-barred match with you, Randy. I like this opening segment. I thought it was a nice big deal to open with Batista. I did think it's kind of crazy that they, brought him back from injury in a surprise way, and not even announcing his first match back. I thought that was kind of crazy. Also, don't get invested in me because I'm out of here. But then after that, Toronto's own Trish Stratus is in the house, and she's the guest host tonight, and she's a brunette. And she welcomes everybody to Toronto, and she says, it's good to be home, but also it's good to be in my WWE home. And she's full of pep. She's very excited here as she addresses the crowd. She's like, I think I'm going to be a pretty good guest host. host. I mean, hey, Randy Orton, Batista, pretty good, right? She says, Bob Barker was a great guest host. Don't you think? You know, my favorite part was when he almost made Chris Jericho cry. Ooh, little throwback, little reference to a past storyline and relationship. A little bit of seed planting for later in this episode as well. But she says, you know, but this isn't The Price is Right. This is Raw. This is my world. And I think I know what the people want. Are you ready for this, folks? And the crowd's like, yeah, I'm ready. And she's like, so Randy Orton needs to have a rematch for the championship. So I figured in 3 weeks at the next pay-per-view, and there's some light booing. And then she's like, he's already wrestling tonight, but in 3 weeks, we will get a rematch between John Cena and Randy Orton in a Hell in a Cell match. Like, wow, what gravitas. She said, oh, I came up with this idea. I thought of this idea for Hell in a Cell. Really? Is it because the next pay-per-view is called Hell in a Cell? But nevertheless, she makes the match for the Hell in a Cell with Orton and Cena. And there's a good pop for that. They're excited for it, but I just like that. I love when live crowds do that, when they're saying, at the next show, well, boo, we want to see it now. And then she wants to give the crowd stratisfaction in the form of our first match, as Kofi Kingston and Primo take on Jack Swagger and The Miz. I guess they're just, that Carlito Primo angle is just dead and cold, and we're never going to see that again, are we? So anyway, U.S. champion Kofi Kingston, fresh off his title retention against The Miz last night at Breaking Point. This tag match is a rematch from Superstars on Thursday, back when they cared. And so since The Miz won that match, and that's what got him the title match in the first place, now we have the rematch here. Primo gets worked over a lot in the early going, but Primo does put the knees up on that running Vader bomb attempt. Kofi gets the hot tag, this big flurry of offense, but just when he is starting to really fire up, we see The Miz powder, and he grabs the U.S. title and just starts to walk away with it. And that distracts Kofi while he's doing the 10 punches, and that allows Swagger to take him out with the gut wrench powerbomb and to win the matchup. So again, continuing the grand tradition of champions losing here on this show, and Miz just keeps walking away, takes the belt with him. I mean, get used to that visual because he will hold that for a while later on. Just not yet though. But I think this is a good continuation of the feud. It's a good way, it's a short and sweet matchup. I mean, this is really only, I think, to build this Miz-Kofi thing, which they do a good job of. The question is, how long will The Miz hold on to this belt unofficially? And speaking of champions who lose a lot, the Divas champion, Mickie James, makes her way down to ringside, and she's joining commentary for our next matchup. It's Gail Kim versus Alicia Fox for the #1 contendership. And I love when Alicia's making her entrance, and they remind, hey, remember Mickie, Alicia beat you a few weeks ago. And all she can say is, she sure did. Gail with some nice fast-paced offense early on, but Alicia with that great tilt-a-whirl backbreaker of hers to cut her off. There's some stuff on commentary where they're like, oh, Trish Stratus, you know, she's the guest host tonight. She was a big mentor for you, Mickie. And Mickey's like, yeah, I was a really big fan of hers a long time ago. And Lawler just chimes in, not that long ago. And I love that that's the way they're going to address that part of Mickey's, you know, story arc, is that, yeah, well, it's a very benign way of describing it too. And it's just also, it's crazy to think of just how much the character of Mickie James has changed in, like, I don't know, the 2 or 3 years since her debut. Alicia's working over Gail for a little while, but she misses the axe kick, and Gail hits a nice regal cutter to start her comeback. I thought that was pretty cool, but she misses a top rope missile drop kick. Alicia does connect with the axe kick this time to cover and win. So she is the new #1 contender, and we had this stare down with Alicia in the ring and Mickie looking up from the booth. It was a good match between the two, and again, it was nice to see the ladies get represented when they were not really present last episode. It felt like a slight detour was taken to get here, since they did have Alicia beat Mickie clean a few weeks ago, but now we seem to be firmly back on the Fox train. Legacy earned the biggest win of their careers, they said, for the 3rd or 4th time, as they were once again hyping up DiBiase versus Michaels later tonight. And then we get one of the many recaps on this episode of the Orton-Batista rivalry over the last year or so, where it was like at the end of last year, they attacked Batista, and you hear this sad child, like every time they do that for the hype packages and make it all sad, that little child voice and the little ding 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 ding, the little chimes or whatever, it's so funny to me. We get our first look at the Trish zone backstage, and I love this, the theming for this one, because, okay, she's a yoga instructor, right? What do you think of when you think of yoga? How about a million fucking lit candles all over the place? And let's keep the lights in the room all the way up, so the candles are just there. And then they have like sticks in jars, and they've got like a poster for Trish's yoga studio in the background. And then amongst all the candles I see, is there a bust of Boba Fett amongst all that? All right, whatever. So she's doing all that. In walks Beth Phoenix, who she's like, what the hell, why didn't you put me in a #1 contenders match? Which like, yeah, that's true. You pinned Mickie James too. Should have been Alicia versus Beth. So anyway, she's kind of berating Trish about this, and she goes, who do you think you are? And as Trish starts to talk, suddenly we see Chris Jericho walk in. Ah, yes, the seeds that were planted earlier in the night now bearing fruit. And Jericho's like, don't give her a chance to talk about herself, Beth. It's only a 2-hour show. And then he brings up that, oh, Trish used to be madly in love with me, and she's still mad that I sent her packing. That's why she can't stop thinking about me. And then Trish says, well, Chris, whatever you need to think about to get through those lonely nights of yours, but I've heard you've got a new soulmate in the Big Show. You're holding hands, you're cuddling and stuff like that. Like, damn, we're just gonna get homophobic. That's all we got here is just you're gay, Christina. Come on, do better. And then Phoenix sticks up for Jericho and says, at least he didn't retire when new competition came to Raw and open up a yoga studio in this second-rate country. I love that. And she goes, at least Chris Jericho has guts. And then Trish is like, okay, first of all, I didn't even know you by the time I retired. But yes, you did, Trish. You literally introduced her to fight Mickie James in the middle of the angle. Then she immediately broke her jaw and was written off. But you still introduced her. Then Trish says, okay, well, I'm going to get back in the ring then. I'll take the both of you on. I'm going to find a partner, and we'll fight in a mixed tag team match tonight. How about that? And then that's pretty big news. Trish back in action for the first time in a while. And so then Beth leaves, and Chris goes to leave, then stops and goes, oh, by the way, I'll take on Bob Barker anytime, any place, anywhere. Again, that sniveling, chicken shit thing that Jericho does after the fact. Then he acts like a big tough guy at the end. But where is Big Show anyway? What a weird scene to see Chris Jericho there. And again, that is his role. He interacts with the guest host du jour. That's pretty much his entire role here. Continuing that, but at least there is continuity. There is, a past relationship here. To show a recap of the Submissions Count Anywhere match from the night before, DX and Legacy, it was the biggest win of their careers. And then we go to our next match. Child Ted takes on Shawn Michaels in his first singles match on Raw in 6 months, which is pretty cool. But Legacy has mics when they make their way to the ring, and Cody doing a parody of the Are You Ready DX shtick, and he goes, are you ready for the dawning of a new era on Raw? And they gloat about how they made DX submit, and no one's ever done that, The Rock didn't do it, Stone Cold didn't do it, the McMahons, not even rated RKO could make DX submit like we did last night. Then Ted says, what we did was truly historic, but we are not done yet. We are going to drive DX out of WWE forever. That is our goal. And then Cody wraps up by saying, from this point forward, we are not going to be known as the sons of the $1 Million Man and Dusty Rhodes. Now they will be known as the fathers of the Legacy. And then their music plays for a bit, and then we go to commercial. We see Shawn and Triple H watching on the screen, making their way down. That was a pretty good, solid promo. Very snarky, very smug. And kind of a shock here, Shawn and Hunter don't get a very big entrance here. It's just break it down, da-da-da-da. And they don't have pyro or glow sticks or nothing. It's just very by the book, get down to business here. And so the match begins. Child Ted working over Shawn for several minutes on offense, starts working over Shawn's eye. Shawn's selling that a lot by the end of the matchup. Shawn blocks another drop kick attempt and puts on his... God, I didn't notice until recently how terrible Shawn's figure 4 looks, actually. It doesn't look like he's putting it on halfway right. DiBiase goes for the $1 Million Dream. HBK fights out of it. He hits the top rope elbow. He goes to tune up the band, but then the Codester pulls Shawn out of the ring, and we get its big DQ, and then the brawling commences. There was all this tension on the outside with Triple H and Cody, will they or won't they, about interference, but now the gloves are off and the brawling has commenced, and they're going all over the place, fighting through the crowd, and kind of a unique way to just go to commercial as they're fighting. Like, the cue is Triple H throwing Cody into the cameraman, and a big tumble, and we lost the transmission. That was pretty neat, kind of an unconventional way to go to commercial. You don't see that very often. payoff and feels very organic in that way. So I thought that was kind of a neat way to wrap that bit up. It's disappointing we don't get like a finish, but again, angle disguised as a match, obviously building up to the next encounter between two teams. Trish's old promo pic makes a comeback as we see the match graphic, and then we go to another tag team match as Hornswoggle and Evan Bourne take on Chavo Guerrero and Carlito and Rosa Mendez. And so the match begins with Hornswoggle like immediately stealing the apple out of Carlito's hand. We get a lot of stuff with Chavo and Carlito taking on Evan, but it's pretty academic. Evan starts making a comeback. He like kicks Carlito out of the ring, then does a really cool like jump, like a leap over the top rope, just like vaults over it. Chavo is looking to mess up Hornswoggle in the corner, but Swoggle's got the mouthful of apple, spits it in Chavo's face, and he goes down. Tadpole splash, boom, 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 and Hornswoggle and Bourne win. Hooray. But at least it was actually a match, like a back and forth story told. Like it was the best match of the last 12 weeks between these guys. And just when it finally gets to that point, that's how you know it ended, because then Chavo gets on the mic and he goes, "What have I got to do? What have I got to do, Hornswoggle? Okay, you win. I give up. Are you happy?" And that was it. That's the end of the segment. And they don't even show Chavo on like camera for half of it. It's like you see Hornswoggle's reaction to Chavo talking. Like, "I quit, I give up." And then there's like 2 beats of silence, then God, that was the way, that was the payoff to this whole thing, was Chavo off camera finally saying he quit. Why couldn't this have been at the Breaking Point pay-per-view? If we're gonna get submissions tied into it, fuck, man, it would have been perfect. Come on. We get another recap of the Orton-Bats rivalry from the last few months. They showed a recap of what happened at Extreme Rules 3 months ago. And then we go to the promo zone. Josh Matthews welcomes the new WWE champion, John Cena. And boy, he looks tired. He looks sore. He looks somber. He doesn't look very happy to be there because he went through quite the hellacious beating at the hands of Orton in the I Quit match. And also, I was like, did he bite his tongue? I felt like his voice had to warm up, because when you listen to this promo, it almost sounds like his tongue's a little swollen, where he's like, "Josh, there are people out there who just like to talk." Like he had to warm up or rev up or something to get into his normal voice. But he talks about how Orton, he's always been talking about how the WWE Championship was his life and he would do anything to protect it. But at the first sign of jeopardy last night, he literally gave it away. And the theme of this promo is promises, because he says, "I promised 2 weeks ago that I would never give up." And, now we know there's going to be a rematch in 3 weeks, and Orton's going to make a lot of promises. He's going to promise that, that win last night was a fluke and that it's just going to be a 3-week rental. Then he says, "Well, I'm going to get my promises out right now. And at Hell in a Cell, when that door closes, I promise you will see a more brutal, savage side of me. You're going to see a different side of me. And that Orton will be the luckiest man alive if he escapes the cell in one piece." And he promises, finally, the champ is here. Another great promo by Cena. I'm liking, again, I've always talked about how I like the serious Cena more and the happy-go-lucky. This really fits, especially given the kind of the gravity and the weight of the match the night before. And it does do a good job building up to the Hell in a Cell. And then we find out that based on what happened earlier in the night with DX and Legacy, they're going to have a rematch at Hell in a Cell in Hell in a Cell. Then we move on to our mixed tag match as Chris Jericho and Beth Phoenix take on Trish Stratus and her mystery partner, MVP. Montail Vontavious Porter is the one who comes out here. And I also noticed that the babyfaces came out first, which I thought was a bit weird. If you're a surprise, you kind of want to put that at the end, I would think. But anyway, it's not too long before everything just kind of falls apart here, because the ladies are fighting in the ring, the Big Show jumping MVP on the outside, Mark Henry making the save, the match is thrown out, but then Trish gets on the mic and says, no, it's not going to go down like that. We're going to have a 6-person tag team match, playa. Wow, who could have seen that coming? But we come back from commercial, the match is in progress. The crowd in Canada very mixed on Jericho here, because they really want to cheer for him, but at the same time, there is a contingent of fans who recognize that he is batty and must be, booed accordingly. There's a point where, MVP's firing up, Jericho immediately tags out to Beth, but instead of Trish coming in, we get this moment where Beth is just kind of like squaring up to MVP, daring him to attack her, essentially, and she goes for a kick, MVP blocks it. He tags in Trish. We get this moment where MVP and Trish do like a double ball and elbow, but Trish has got like no rhythm. She wants to go for a dive, but Big Show on the outside trips her up, and that leads to Mark Henry to hit and show with the truck stick on the outside, bringing the big man down. Trish makes the comeback, hits the Stratusfaction onto Beth to pin and win. The match was fairly predictable in terms of how it was going to wrap up, but it was fine. Does this help Beth Phoenix at all? No, because Trish Stratus isn't coming back for a while. So she just, gave Trish a win, which was nice, and it was good for the local crowd, certainly. But yeah, does it really advance a plot for Beth? No, and not so much for, again, the never-ending saga with MVP and Henry and Jericho and Show. Let's get something different with this. They announced that next week's guest host will be Cedric the Entertainer, and we'll see how that pans out. But we go to our main event now. No holds barred, Randy Orton versus Batista. It's Batista's last match on Raw before he goes back home to smack you down. But some good, quick back and forth to start off with this matchup. Orton he pokes Batista in the eye to cut him off. He wants to hit him with a chair, but Batista plows into him with a spear. They're fighting on the outside. Bats is just all over Orton to the point where Randy has had enough and he wants to bail. But hark! Is this the finish we saw a few weeks ago with the Floyd Mayweather week? Yes, it is, because John Cena just shows up and he comes on the stage. I love Orton's reaction here because he's like rocking a hard place and he's going like, huh, 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 for like 20 seconds before he finally gets laid out by Cena. And then John throws him back into the ring. Batista hits the spine buster and the Batista bomb. I almost feel the crowd started to boo him for that. Like they were kind of mad that like Cena helped him. But Batista ends up winning, and that was exactly the same finish as the no holds barred match or the no DQ McMahon and DX versus the Legacy. Orton wants to bail. John Cena comes to make the save. Hey, at least they're keeping consistent here. And then Cole wraps it all up by saying, the Viper has been shamed for his sins by Batista, that's a wild way to put it. But anyway, that's the end of the show. I thought the match was okay. It put a nice bow on that Orton-Batista rivalry that kept getting kind of stopped due to injury. Before Bats can move on to SmackDown, he gets a win. There's no stakes involved here, so Orton losing again. It's continuing. It's part of a storyline at this point now. Him, all the times he lost before that on TV, that wasn't part of a downward spiral. Now that he's lost the championship, 2 losses in a row, oh boy, batten down the hatches. I give this episode of Raw a 3 out of 5. I think it was okay. There was a nice return and farewell all in one go for Batista. Considering there's so little time to build between now and the next pay-per-view, I thought they did a good job getting those storylines across and just getting those things announced right away. I think there were a lot of DQs and other moments that could have been DQs that just kind of peppered throughout the whole show. Felt very kind of interference, cheap shot kind of heavy at times. I give Trish Stratus a 3 out of 5 rating as well for the hostess of Raw. I don't understand why guest hosts have the power to make matches way in advance. Why doesn't a guest host make a match for WrestleMania, a WrestleMania main event? That would have been chaotic. Have them try and, undo that. They had ultimate power when they said it. Hell in a Cell is supposed to be a holy shit moment. It's the boom drop. When Hell in a Cell is uttered, it's oh my God. But then Trish is just Hell in a Cell, eh? It's so weak. As if turning Hell in a Cell into a themed pay-per-view on its own back then wasn't enough. And it does get ridiculous as the years go on. This is the first year of the themed pay-per-view concept. So we're just trying out all these things now. But I think that this was the beginning of the end of Hell in a Cell being considered a good match on the whole, because it got watered down so much by the pay-per-view, in my opinion here. But I thought it was good to see Trish get back in the ring. They did have storyline continuity, bringing up the thing with Jericho. Again, when you bring that up and have kind of a one-off like this, it kind of sucks because it didn't go anywhere. I did think it was crazy. We had unadvertised return matches for Trish and Batista in one episode. Both of them were just kind of hey, it's happening right now. Might have been nice if one of those got advertised. My pick for the best thing of the show was Orton and Batista, the no holds barred match. It was, I think, the match with the most weight to it, the most heat, and I think it was done pretty well. As far as the worst thing, it's got to be the final chapter. I hope it's the final chapter in the Chavo Guerrero Hornswoggle War. The match itself, technically fine. I still think it's the best of their series, but just the way it ended and the way Chavo just the way he gave up at the end, that left a bad taste in my mouth. The way they went about that was not good. Time now for the all-time guest host rankings. I am putting the Diva of the Decade, Trish Stratus, right in the middle at number 6 of 12. I think it's very interesting the way these wrestlers have trended on the series so far. They're square in the middle of the pack. You look at the list and it's all the wrestlers, and then you've got like the outsiders on either end of the spectrum. I think it just goes to what I've been saying, that the talent, the performers, they have like a baseline for how you interact in the world of WWE, and then from there, it's the outsider's job to sink or swim. And I think we've been seeing a lot fewer sinkers than I thought we would get 12 weeks in. But again, this series is mighty young. We've got a lot other ones I know that are going to be crap in the weeks to come. But what did you think of this episode of Raw? How about Trish Stratus as host? Let me know in the comments section below. Be sure to give the video a thumbs up if you like it. Subscribe to Wrestling with Regret. Hit the like button, hit the hype button. And hey, when you're done hitting all those buttons, it'll be about 2 weeks from now when I give you the next episode of Guest Host Raw, hosted by Cedric the Entertainer. But until then, I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.